the biggest thing to structure your life for creativity is to build in opportunities for surprise and inspiration to grab you. See, that's the thing. So many people are focused on to-do lists and how can I, hack the day, and then you think about the next day and how you're going to hack it. I think if you set a basic structure, that's good. But for creativity, you need creativity to breathe. You need creativity to like, you need to be flexible to changing the task and going back. Let's say you have 5-6 tasks. You have to be very flexible and create your day in a way where you can drop task 2 if it requires more incubation period. And you do that with self-compassion and with acceptance and awareness, and say, you know what, that needs incubation, and then you do step 5, maybe jump in the shower, like, but and then go to back to 2 later. The thing with creativity is that it's a linear process. It's not it's non-linear. And you asked a very linear question, which is why I was saying maybe I'm not the best one in the world to answer that one.
No, well, it's interesting though, on the creativity side. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts on, I don't know if you got to check out Dan Pink's new book, When? He talks about optimal timing for work and focus and productivity and creativity. And he says that we're most creative when usually kind of early afternoon, when slightly fatigued. Do you find that to be the case? And do you have any recommendations for structuring a day around that if it is true?
I mean, I definitely find that to be the case. I definitely get my best writing done in the evening when I'm not self-editing a lot.
Yeah, right.
I think to me that's the thing, is I'm not I separate my deciding from my doing, which is one of the better, pop psych phrases to sort of say, I'm not going to decide what to do right now. I've already decided that I'm going to spend these 2 hours trying to create something, and who cares what happens if I sit here, fine, but I've decided to do that. So I think a lot of this really does come from self-knowledge of when you work best. I'm sure many people, I tend to be an afternoon and late night person. Many people have the same things for the morning. I think that the first thing is to keep track. I don't think it's very magical. I think using those metacognitive skills to sort of notice when you're feeling motivated, write down if you have a good creative workflow, maybe jot down, keep a journal of when things are good. I haven't read Dan's new book, but I think we are so trapped in this weird factory model of how we set up our days as if we still work at factories. Maybe perhaps one of the best benefits of this pandemic will be to show the future of work as it can be flexible, human-centered, and enhancing our ability to really work when we feel most productive. I think email, by the way, I'm just going to say this thing, email is by far the death of society. We need a new answer to email. It's not that I mind getting emails. I don't. It's that it's probably the opposite, that I'm like, oh, I could do something, and it feels nothing happens. You don't produce anything with
procrastination.
Yeah, it feels like you're doing something. So I find email to be a total creativity killer, and I hope somebody out there has a new platform or way to ping each other that's a little better.
Cal Newport wrote a book called Deep Work. And me and him really got into it on my podcast. He reached out to me because I had written an article. The title of that article was "Creativity is Much More Than 10,000 Hours of Deliberate Practice." And he had written an article about how creativity requires deliberate practice. So he read that and he's like, maybe we should talk about that. It seems we have opposing views on this matter. And we really got into that because I really am quite critical of the deliberate practice zealots. They're more just like type A personalities. I don't even know type A is scientifically valid in the literature, but that where we have to be efficient and everything has to be this linear process. But creativity is this like winding, all around curve. But I think there is a lot of wisdom. So I just want to end this by saying, and what I'm saying, my point here by saying, Cal Newport convinced me by the end of that podcast that these things can be reconciled with each other, that we can still leave open enough spontaneity in the process, and that deep work is really more about getting rid of all the distractions that will not allow us to be in that full flow absorptive state. But he's not saying that within that state we can't really flow. and that's just what I was criticizing, and I wasn't sure if that's what he meant, but I'm glad that he clarified that for me.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's about creating the overall space, and that's the structure, and then you are creative and more flowy within the structure.
Yes, absolutely.
Any insights on creativity and screen flickering and light spectrum of our phones, laptops, and TVs?
I don't know about the creativity itself. I'm more concerned about our actual mental, awareness, the drive to look at our phones. I think one fun thing to pay attention to is the feeling you have before the feeling to pick up your phone. And I don't think that the screen itself is the evil part, although there's data to suggest it's not, that the blue light can slow down your circadian rhythms and offset things. But I think more than anything, it's the distractibility. I've installed and deleted Twitter on my phone like 10 times in the last week. And I think that's really where the creativity killer is, because talk about self-editing. If you're always editing, should I be looking at the news? Should I be looking at the news? You won't, I doubt that you can break into a place where you can focus on gratitude or some of these states that will help us connect with this present moment.
If what you've heard on Flow Research Collective Radio has been helpful, please consider doing us a solid and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening to this. Reviews help us connect to a wider audience so we can get these peak performance principles out to more people.